Welcome back to the Pushing Through Loss podcast, where we share stories, honor resilience, and embrace strength. I am Kalila Green Siciliano, and it is my honor to begin the journey with you. With me today is Shannan, who I met through a Facebook group, but we instantly connected for a lot of different reasons in terms of spirituality and understanding each other and really being able to just talk without judgment. And when she told me that she had also experienced a pregnancy loss within her own story, I asked you right away, would you come on? And you said yes. So I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. So, because this is another part of my story that so many people don't know about me. And I just really think that it's important when it comes to women talking about their infant loss.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you have such a diverse story to begin with. You, in your own podcast and in your own speaking career, you talk so much about survival. And this, I feel like, even though you don't speak so much about the pregnancy loss, is exactly that. It's survival on the other side.
It really is, because when we look at all the different traumas and experiences that we go through within our life, there is a learning experience with whatever happens. And there's always a gift from God that comes through that message, no matter what it is, no matter how tragic it is. And if we can actually see the gift within the tragedy, that I think is probably the most beautiful thing that we will receive.
Yeah.
But it's also for us to help others and to speak openly, because as a society too, in so many areas of our lives, we are told not to talk about things. And then what ends up happening is we end up suppressing our feelings and emotions.
Yep.
But our body and our mind can only handle that for so long.
Right.
And with my case, what ended up happening with all these different areas that I had to suppress, or because of the fear or whatever, I turned to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many women that do end up turning to alcohol as well.
Right.
And I just want the women out there to know that, there are women like you and I that have gone through a infant loss. And it is so important to express your feelings and emotions, because that's the only way that you are going to heal.
Yeah, it's true. And it's one of those where, like you said, the more you suppress it, the worse it gets.
It does. It does. And you don't really realize it at the time until years later, when the effects of whatever it is, how it's consumed your life, is in full force.
Right.
And then you have all these other things that you have to heal on top of it.
Right. And you might not necessarily turn to alcohol, but you could turn to something else, or you could suppress it enough that your emotions completely shut down and you build a wall. And there's a lot of different things that can happen.
Oh yeah, you could be damaging relationships that actually really meant a lot to you. There's just so many things that can take place. For sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, without going into too much detail, because I want people to also go listen to your podcast, but tell me a little bit about how you got to pregnancy, and because I know you're divorced, and
no, I'm still with my husband.
I thought that you had gotten divorced. Oh, that's right. No. I remember. You are sorry about that. It is something where your family, you had to step away from, but your husband got closer.
Yeah.
So tell me more about getting to the point of pregnancy where you were comfortable enough that you could sort of release those feelings with your husband. And then when you got to the pregnancy loss, what happened?
Okay, so first of all, I want everybody to know here that I do have 4 beautiful children. They range in age from 14 to 24. Now, what do you mean being comfortable with pregnancy?
That I know that you had gotten to a point, because your relationship with your own parents was so difficult, to be able to then say, okay, I'm ready and I want to be a mom, but how do I look to myself to be a mom, knowing that my husband is there to support me, but also with this struggle of what your history was?
Okay. Well, I had known my husband since I was 14 years old. So when we actually got together, years later, how old was I? I was about 28 years old and he was 31. And then, so he was kind of like a childhood crush. I had known him. you know. Yeah, and it was when we seen each other again after that amount of time, like I just knew, you know how you just know,
Yeah.
right? For whatever reason. And yeah, and then we ended up having our first daughter. And we were not married when we had our first daughter. We had gone through a lot of struggles and things that had taken place, right? But we ended up having our first daughter, absolutely beautiful. She's just the sweetest thing ever. And then it was a couple years after that that the pregnancy that I lost, that was not a planned one at all. And even our first daughter was not planned, but she was such a blessing for sure. But with the second child that was to be born, that baby, that, I don't want to say that it was a mistake, or that it was an accident. I really look at that pregnancy now, well, actually, even right after the fact, that when I had gone through that whole process of that pregnancy, was I knew I had so much faith, and I've always been really intuitive, or I always knew that there was something bigger than me. And it was like, why did this happen? This happened for a particular reason. At that time, I was searching for the answers, and I knew why it had happened. So when that pregnancy actually happened, it was so much different than my first one. I can see now why things did play out the way that they did play out, because there was a message in that pregnancy by far.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I understand that. And that was probably one of the biggest reasons of why I could actually get through it, because it was, once we get into the story, it was so devastating. And, I can talk about it openly now, but that's also because of, the journey that I've had throughout my life. There are so many things that I've had to really endure. And, I've embraced all of it now. And, there's a lot of women out there that still can't talk about that time that they've lost their baby, or there's still a lot of attachment of sadness that goes along with it. And, like I said, the more I talk about it, the more it is what it is.
Right. And it helps to connect you to the baby that couldn't be here right now.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. But like, I look at your story, and you had so much support after. And I'm going to be totally honest and frank and upfront. I didn't have that support.
Right. I remember when we had first spoken, you had said that somebody basically looked at you and said, but you can have more kids, and aren't you over it?
No, that was the look that I was receiving from people. That was kind of like the message that they give you. And I know that other women have experienced that look too. And there's that look in their eyes, and there's that look in their face. And that look is what I will always remember for the rest of my life.
Right. And you're just left on your own.
You really are left on your own. And it's also that look of, they feel sad for you, or they feel sorry for you, but they don't approach you.
Right.
So that's also, you're being rejected.
Right.
They're not taking your feelings into account. And I think that's really what hurts the most. So, and like I say this in one of my live videos on my social media, is if you know somebody that has gone through something like that, don't stand back and look at them with those sad, pitiful eyes of yours. Because number one, to me, those weren't looks of, I'm sorry. They were far from that.
Right.
I don't want to be felt sorry for, and I did not want to be felt sorry for at that time. Right. I wanted people to come up to me and say, we are so sorry. If you need anything, we are here for you. Or you don't even have to say anything. Just come up and give me a hug. Right. Don't give me that look, because what that look did is it actually gave me shame. Shame of losing that child.
Right.
Shame
making
of
it feel like it was your fault when it wasn't.
Exactly. And growing, the community that I was in was about 10,000 people. And And, you know, it doesn't matter at what age you lose a child, it affects the mother very much so.
Right.
And a lot of people, they're like, well, she was only, 19 or 20 weeks, into a pregnancy. That's huge for a lot of women.
Yeah.
Just because I did physically hold the baby afterwards, but it's just because it's not long term or full term, it's still a baby to that mother that's carrying that child.
Yeah, and there's people that have a miscarriage at 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks that still feel the same way. So it is however old the gestation is whatever your connection is your connection. It doesn't matter.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me when you found out that something was wrong.
Well, like I said, my second pregnancy was so different from my first pregnancy. So I didn't have morning sickness with my first. I really didn't show until 7 months, 8 months pregnant. I great, everything was fine. But with this one, it was just so weird because when I found out that I was pregnant, it was like almost I was instantly showing. I had the morning sickness. I just felt a really off kilter, like, you know what I mean? And of course, just to be in the safe zone, I didn't want to let anybody know that I was pregnant until I was after my first trimester. And a lot of women are like that, and for good reason too, right? And then, but I got big right away. Like probably at about 7-8 weeks, like I was big. And so I couldn't hold it, hold off on that. And it was a celebration that we were going to have another baby. It was a shocker or whatever too as well. But, whatever it was, I was pregnant. It was going to happen.
Right.
And then it was about the 18th week was when I was to have my first ultrasound. And me and my husband went to the first ultrasound. And we're in there. And just as soon as I laid on the table and the ultrasound is being performed on me, I just got this overwhelming feeling something's not right, because it just seemed that the whole procedure was taking too long. Then the technician left, and I looked at my husband, and I said, well, we weren't married at the time, but I said to my spouse, I go, I got a feeling something's not right. And he, he's always Mr. Positive. Still to this day, he's Mr. Positive. And he goes, no, he goes, everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, no, I just got this feeling something's wrong.
Yeah.
So the technician came back in and she goes, we are going to be bringing the specialist in. And so the specialist came in and they're both going through the ultrasound and that right away. And then the technician ended up leaving. And then the doctor said to me, well, we're going to book you into the general hospital because this is what's actually taken place. So my baby had osteogenesis imperfecta type 2, which is commonly known as brittle bone disease. But with my baby, mine was stage 2. So there was no hope for this baby at all. So I got dressed, and of course I'm in shock. I'm absolutely devastated. Well, if you can just imagine, I'm crying. I'm not really understanding anything. So we get to the hospital and we're put into, the main doctor's office right away, into his office. And he comes in and he starts explaining everything to us. And he starts asking us all these different questions about, our family history, our family background, the genetics, everything. If anybody on either side of the family has had any of this.
Right.
And
I feel like you're sitting there just thinking, I don't care about my family history. I just want to know what I can do for my baby.
No. Yeah, I'm just kind of like what's going on, and what does osteogenesis imperfecta type 2 really mean? Like what does that mean? Where does it come from? How does it happen? Like I'm just like crying and I'm just numb and like I'm in total shock, right? And so they're trying to figure all this stuff out. And basically it was just a fluke in the genes. It was like 1 out of 500,000 people that it happens to. And it just happened to be me. Right. So of course, then that anger and that being upset and everything kicks in. And it's like, why is this happening to me? Like, really, why is this happening to me?
Right. I feel like you go through all those phases of grief within a 5-minute span. And then when your body starts to process it, that's when the phases of grief really start to happen.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So they're telling me all of these things that's going to be happening. And I can't believe that they're actually saying this to me. So they're saying that the baby already has a broken leg and a broken arm. And this is 18 weeks. And I'm like, okay, okay. Oh, so a broken leg and a broken arm already,
And there's
inside.
still a lot of room in there.
Yeah. And then they had said that the baby would not survive outside my womb.
Mm.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, not having logic, well, I can still carry the baby till full.
Right. And I'll just keep the baby in there.
I'll just keep the baby safe and it's going to be fine. And, I
Right.
can still be the mother and, until the baby, is born, but I'm not seeing anything past that,
Right.
and I'm just, okay. So, and then they said that I would have to terminate the baby, but it was up to me when I was going to terminate the baby. And I'm just really thinking, okay, well, I've got months to terminate the baby. I can deal with this. I can handle all of this. It's going to be just fine,
Right.
but then I'm not realizing that as the weeks go by, more of the bones are going to be broken.
Right.
So I'm actually, the longer I carry this pregnancy on, the more deformed this child is going to be.
And probably the more pain.
Absolutely. So that was my next question to the doctor. I had said, at what point does the baby start to have sensation of pain? And they said, now is when the sensation of pain starts to happen. And I'm just still thinking like, oh my God. So my baby's in pain right now, but I'm not really comprehending anything.
Right.
So he had said, okay, you and your husband go back home. You need to really think about when you're going to be terminating the pregnancy. And because I live up in Canada, I don't know what the rules are down in the US, but up in Canada, I do believe that was such a long time ago now, because this was December. No, at this point, it's not December. It's the end of November of 2001, 2001, okay. Right? And back then, if you carried your pregnancy past 21 weeks, and then it was classified as a baby, it was no longer a fetus, would have to announce the death. It would have to be registered with the government of Canada and the province of Saskatchewan that I was in. I don't know what it is down in the States.
It depends on the state, but most of the time, if it's before 20 weeks, it's considered a miscarriage. And if it's after 20 weeks, it's considered a stillbirth.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty close to what it was up here in our province in Canada. And you know what? It could be 20 weeks. I can't remember at this point in time. So I was, like I said, I was about 18 weeks. And then, so he told me to go home and try and just, put my thoughts together. And the baby did have to be aborted, but it was up to me when the baby was to be aborted. And he strongly suggested that it be done right away. Of course, to save my mental state, save the pain of the baby and all of that. Right. So I went home and, of course, I'm devastated, crying. I was at the lowest time of my life at that point in time. Depression, everything had kicked in, like not feeling well, anxiety. Like if you can imagine every single emotion wrapped up in a ball and thrown into me, that's exactly what it was.
Right.
And then, so a couple of days had gone by. And then, of course, the fluttering stage is starting to happen within my stomach. And I can feel it and everything. And then, there's a lot of activity that's happening. And like I said, this pregnancy was so different because even though I was only 18 weeks, it was almost like I was at like 30 some weeks.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? Just the sensations, because of course my body became so acute of every feeling and emotion that was happening with inside me. Like everything was full force. There was just so much clarity that was happening within me. And I can remember saying to my husband, oh my gosh, because I was standing in the dining room area and I was so excited. And I was like, oh my goodness, look at, come here, because I could see my stomach move. And I said, come here, come take a look. And, not even thinking that the baby, with each movement is breaking something else within the body.
Right.
And then he came over and he put his hand on my stomach. And it was at that moment that I realized that, oh my gosh, my baby probably broke another leg or another arm or something and is probably in pain right now. And that's why the baby is
There's so
kicking
much movement.
or is moving.
Right.
And then I just broke down and I bawled and I bawled and I bawled. And then that was the decision. Then I'm like, no, I can't continue on with this pregnancy. There was that selfishness within me that wanted to protect the baby. But at the same time, it was like, no, I can't.
Right.
I can't, because this is no longer about me anymore. This is about the baby.
Right.
So then I ended up phoning the doctor the next day. And I said, yes, that I will go through with aborting the baby. So I ended up having to go to the general hospital again. And it was actually a 3-day process is what took place. And that was the most devastating time of my life, because what they had to do is, and we lived an hour away from the city. So when it was time for me to go into the hospital, what they did is I had to be dilated. So what they did is they inserted these matchstick. Well, that's exactly what they looked like. They were matchsticks, which were inserted into my cervix. Then I left the hospital. Then I had to go back. So that was to start my labor. So I ended up, and then I had to go 3 days in a row. So I would go home, drive home, and I was put into labor. I ended up being in labor for 3 days.
Wow.
If you can imagine being in labor for 3 days.
Yeah.
So the first day went up there, got these inserted, came home. The next day drove back to the hospital. Then they took those out. Then they put stronger ones in. I went back home. The next day I went again, came back home. And then on the 4th day was when they had put me into total labor, because I was at that point where I could be dilated. And so I was put in the hospital. I was admitted into the hospital, and then the doctor had said and then my husband stayed with me. And then I had said, because of course I'm still not really registering everything, right? And I'm like, will I be able to see the baby? And they were like, yes, you will be able to see the baby. And I said, well, how big would the baby be? And they had said it would be about the size of my hand. So, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, will the baby be breathing? And they're going, well, might take 1 or 2 breaths, but then the baby will die. And still it's not registering.
Right.
You know, because I just can't fathom. I just can't imagine. Like,
Right.
So then then they had induced me even more. So now I am dilated and I am able to go into full labor. And it's like I'm having full labor, just like the baby is like full term.
Right.
But just before that had taken place, the nurses had asked if we wanted a priest to come in and to bless us.
Aww.
and to bless the child. And of course we did, right? So then that happens, the priest comes in and then, you know, does all the blessings and everything, right? And then he ends up leaving. And he asked us if he wanted, once the baby was born, for him to come back. And we said, absolutely, of course we did. And then, so then the whole process of the delivery was happening. And I can tell you one thing, oh my gosh. So I'm in full delivery. Like I said, it's like, you know, it's the baby's 9 months. I'm at term.
Right.
And I can tell you, it was almost like you could cut the energy in that room. That was the first time I ever experienced the higher power.
Interesting.
Whatever anybody wants to, if they want to call it God or whatever it is, or the universe or spirit.
Right.
And let me tell you, it was like, even though I was in so much pain and that process was happening through me and all this chaos was going on around me, I could not believe the presence that I felt of God within that room.
Wow.
And that is what really carried me through. And it was so thick, and I knew everything was going to be okay. I knew it. I could feel it. And it was just the most unbelievable thing, and it was so beautiful. And the love, I've never felt that amount of love in my entire life.
That's
Ever.
amazing.
Ever. And then after it was, after I gave birth to the baby, it was still at the very stages of the sex organs being developed. So they could not tell what the baby was until after the autopsy. Well, it ended up being a little girl. And we named her Abby Kim. And so she was born on December 19th. Yeah, she was born on December 19th of 2001. And it was just so unbelievable because she looked exactly like my husband.
Wow.
Yeah, like we held her, she was put in a little basket with a little blanket and everything, and we could see her. Yeah, and it was just, and of course we held her in that, but it was just so unbelievable. Yeah, she had his fine lips, everything. And then when I got pregnant again, about a year after that, with my with my living child, she looks exactly like what Abby looked like.
Wow.
Kind of knew that would happen. I just feel there's just something. And yeah, our second daughter looks identical to my husband.
Wow. So
yeah.
How old was your first daughter when this happened?
She was just under 2.
So does she remember what happened? Do you talk about it with her ever?
Like it's very open, that I did lose a child.
Right.
But it's not brought up on daily conversation or anything. But like they know that they would have had a sister be 22. Well, she would be 22 coming up. No,
Yeah.
she'd be 23 coming up. Yeah.
Do you celebrate her birthday?
No,
No.
we don't. No, we don't. Like I've got her ashes put in a little thing from the funeral home and stuff like that. And she is, in the cabinets and everything. But yeah, no, you kind of think about that, and it's just, it was a real difficult time in my life, because that was also at a time too where and I'll tell you why I know that Abby Kim came along. Because there was a lot of stuff with me and my husband. We didn't start off with a very strong foundation, and things always happen, right? And a lot of times when there's a death of a child, people that are in a relationship either bond together or they separate.
Right.
She was brought into our world to bring us together.
Interesting. So it really connected the two of you forever.
Yeah. Because we were so unstable, and it was like, okay, like I knew what I wanted in life. And I'll be honest, I don't think my husband at that time knew what he wanted.
Right.
He was still in his stages of partying and having a good time and, being a guy's guy and all of that. Right. Living, the single life. And it was like, and we had a daughter, we had already had a daughter together. And it's like, okay, right. Like, do we stay together or don't we? And that child was brought in for many reasons.
Yeah.
And that's why I could make it through, right? Because I looked at it after the fact, and that was when it was like, okay, like, are we going to make this work, the two of us, or not?
And how did you breach that conversation with him? Because like you said, it either brings you together or it really separates you two. And I know a lot of people who can't voice that and can't tell their spouse or their partner, look, we need to either work through this or we're done. Usually it's just we're done.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. My husband doesn't like to feel his emotions at all, or he doesn't like to talk. But that is not something that he tries to avoid. That's just something that I would say a lot of families are like.
Right.
Where me, I talk about my emotions. Of course I do. Right? Well, anybody who knows me.
It's helped you get through everything that you've been through. So
absolutely. And I cried a lot. I did. I cried every single day. I really kept to myself. I didn't like to go out or anything like that, right? Because I was in mourning. And like, I would look at my husband at that time, and I'm like, and I would think to myself, like, where are your emotions? Why are you not expressing your emotions? But what I didn't realize is that because he works a lot. So he would have his emotions while he was working out in the oil, right?
Oh,
Out in the field,
interesting.
in the oil industry and that, right? And then finally we did sit down and like, because I just couldn't understand it. Like, where are your emotions? Like, are you not sad that this happened? Like, look at what happened to me.
You're like, I'm falling apart over here, and you
I'm
seem
falling
totally
apart here and I'm
fine.
not getting no comfort or any. If we're done, then tell me we're done,
Right.
because that to me is a lot easier, you know, than just carrying on like nothing ever happened, like this, you know, this pregnancy didn't even happen.
Right. And especially because you were receiving all of that from the people in your community, you for
Exactly.
sure you couldn't receive that from your husband. You wanted to know that he was there for you.
Exactly. Exactly. And then that was when he started to really express his emotions and his feelings. But once again, it's me drawing things out like, come on, like
like almost
this,
shaking him, like, hello.
yeah.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why, like with your story, it's just so beautiful.
Thank
It's
you.
just so beautiful. But there are so many other women that experience the exact same, the reactions.
Right. It's definitely one where you're right. There's a wide range of people who can be very supportive and understanding to completely removed from the situation. And that's not to say that either one is what you need or what you want. Like, I didn't know that I was going to need that support, but thank God I had the people there to be able to say, I'm here, and whatever you need, I'm here. If it's just to sit and cry, then that's what you need. And for so many people, I wish that they could also receive the same thing.
And I'm going to be very bold and upfront when I say this next statement,
Okay.
because it is so true that when it is a pregnancy that is not expected, people look at that pregnancy and value it less.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say
And
that.
I know that. And
Right.
I know that. Right.
When we got pregnant with our second child and we were starting to tell people, there was a one specific couple that like didn't say congratulations or anything at first. And my husband said to them, we just said that we're pregnant. Like, I don't understand why you're reticent for giving us this joy and this excitement from you. And they said, well, we didn't know if it was planned or not.
What does that matter?
Right. My husband and I said the same thing. We were like, who cares? We're having another child. That's what matters.
Yeah.
It happens to be that it was planned, but who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's where those looks came from.
Right.
And these looks, that the worst looks were actually from the people that were supposedly our friends.
Oh, that's the worst.
It is. You know what I mean? And it was just kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, and that, it's sad to say, but that is what actually what happens is what happens.
Yeah, and you get to know who's really there for you and who's not.
Yeah.
And it really is an awful way to find that out, but in a way, I'd rather know. And looking back on it, it's something where I can say now, you know, for the people that weren't there for me, they let me. It's your loss, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, like I've been introduced to so many women since then that have had, you know, the loss of a child. And right away, it's just, I don't give them a look or whatever. I just give them a big hug and embrace them. And I just say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, and I let them know I've experienced what you're going through. So I know the deep pain that comes with it. And it's, yes. And like, that's all I can say is just reach out to those individuals and touch them, hug them,
right.
You know, and just let them know that you're there for them. Don't give the look.
Right. It's so interesting because in Judaism, and I don't know if this is how a lot of other cultures or religions are, but we very often there's a meal train that goes around. When anything good happens, when anything bad happens, you have a baby, somebody creates a meal train, and your whole community gets together and helps to make meals for you for however long you need. Somebody unfortunately passes away, the whole community gets together and they make meals for you, right? So Judaism very much is a religion based on food and making sure other people are taken care of. And I remembered at one point when a friend of mine, her parents passed away, and I didn't know what to bring them, because I know that at the time they were keeping kosher and I wasn't very religious. So I didn't want to make them something in my kitchen. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to pick up a handful of oranges, some apples, some things that maybe they don't necessarily have in their house at the moment because everyone's bringing them meals. And I remembered her saying to me, that was one of the most thoughtful things that somebody could bring. And now whenever someone's going through something, I try to do like a very basic food shopping, because first of all, I don't know what the person likes to eat or not eat, but it's one thing to have someone make you a meal, but it's another thing for somebody to be like, I don't know what you are in the mood for, but if you just need a quick sugar pick me up, here's an orange. Just like a way for you to feel loved and cared for in that one snacked moment, to say, I don't want a full meal. I just need to grab something and then go back to my bed and cry or fall back to sleep or whatever it is. I don't even have the strength to warm up a meal.
Exactly. No, that's absolutely beautiful. No, we in our culture, no, I don't really. You know what? Some people may do that, but I know that, yeah, I not in the circle that, you know, I was affiliated with. You know,
Right.
I don't live in that province anymore, and you know, those individuals were from my past, and you know, of course, I've grown and flourished and everything from there. I've got
Right.
4 beautiful children that I absolutely love, and
Yeah. Who sound
I
pretty incredible.
yeah, like my oldest is 24 and my youngest is 14, like I said earlier, and I'm 54, so I'm a later mom as well.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say, like my latter pregnancies, my two younger children, they're 14 and 15. So basically I was pregnant for 2 years straight.
Right.
And those were my most amazing, like I had all great pregnancies except for the one that I had lost, but like I my later two were just the most amazing. I'd never felt more healthier, more happier. And that
Wow.
was when I was 39, 40. And like I went to the gym right up until my due dates.
Nice.
Um, and then right after I had you know, the last two,
Right.
I was back at the gym within like a week to 2 weeks.
All right. You're
And
making everybody else feel bad now.
I'll tell you, like it was amazing. I just loved everything about it. But
That's
of course, I
awesome.
was older too. I was more in tune with my body. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, but things, yeah, it was really, really good.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I didn't have near the stress at that particular time with my pregnancies either, like
Mm,
I did with my first one. And
mm,
it is so true that any of the energy that you carry within your body through your pregnancies, it does go into the little being that, you know, you're giving birth to. And
yeah.
I can see the difference, totally see the difference within their personalities, even to this day. And I
Yeah.
can sit back and I'm like, yeah, that
It
yeah.
puts a lot of pressure then. Then you're like, oh man, oh, I can't get upset. I can't get stressed.
Yeah, I better meditate all day.
Right. I remember when I was pregnant with my first, also, I had gotten into a big fight with my parents over something silly. And in that moment, I was like, okay, try and stay calm, whatever I'm feeling. I know that she's still very small, but she's totally feeling it too. And it's a lot of pressure.
It is. It is. Speaking of pressure, I have to tell you and your audience one more thing.
Yeah.
So I was pregnant with my last child, which is my son.
Mhm.
And I went into the doctor's appointment, and she had said to me, you know how they take the fluid to check to see, you know, because
Mm.
I was an older mom, right?
Right.
Because the chances end up being that your baby could have Down syndrome.
Right.
And she goes, Shannan, she goes, I need to bring it to your attention that there's an extreme high chance that your child will have Down syndrome because the amount of fluid
Mhm.
that was showing up. And I was like, no. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And she goes, and when I got this back from the test, she goes, all I could think about is, oh no, not you, Shannan, not you, because of everything that I've been through before.
Mhm.
And she goes, I just, of course I have tell you because this is where you have the option of aborting the baby or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that moment, I just looked at her and I just thought to myself, no.
Whatever,
Even if the
whatever it will be,
child
it will
does
be.
have Down syndrome, it will be, it will be.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm having this baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went home and I told my husband, I said, there's a really good chance that our baby's going to will have Down syndrome. And he's like, well, we're just going to love that baby just as much.
I love that.
And I'm like, absolutely, we are.
Right.
Then, of course, when he was born, he did not have Down syndrome. But, that really made me think that how many women are told that and their baby doesn't have Down syndrome and they abort that baby.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like for me, that wasn't even an option. I was having that baby no matter what.
Right.
But
and it's so different because with the baby that you did have to make that choice for, it was a question of the baby being in pain and literally not being able to grow bigger without suffering versus, okay, so the baby has Down syndrome, that there's a lot of ways to be able to help that child grow even as it becomes a full human being outside the womb.
Yes. Yes. And I look now at, all of the technology, just everything surrounding, babies with Down syndrome, how they're brought so much out into society now. There's so many support groups. They're living normal functioning lives. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like it is amazing how society has supported that aspect of things. And it was just blown me away.
Yeah. My best friend always says that kids with Down syndrome always feel like angels that are put on earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Their smile just lights up everything. It literally is like being face to face with an angel. It's something incredible about it.
Yeah. They teach us patience. They teach us compassion. They teach us so many things on so many different levels. Yeah.
And honesty too. I feel like every person I've ever known with Down syndrome is so to the point and honest and will get you into that core level of like thinking it like a child and saying, I'm just going to tell the truth. I got it. I have to be honest with everything I have to say.
Yeah, no. But I did. I had to share that with you because anybody that's listening and is going through that right now, or it perhaps may come in the future, really, really think about it because
you never know.
There's that little person inside you that may not have Down syndrome. And so what if that baby has Down syndrome?
Right.
It's just going to bring so much more love and joy to your life. You're going to learn so much from that little person. And that little person is brought forward for a particular reason.
Yeah.
It's not to hurt you. It's not to damage your life or anything. There is such a higher power that you're going to learn, and you're going to be divinely guided to take care of that baby as well.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
I don't even have a question right now because of the fact that that's such a beautiful statement. It's something that I feel like as much as science knows, I said this in a previous podcast, I was actually just listening to it to edit it. And I was saying, as much as science knows it, as much as the doctors know, they don't know anything. They know so much. And yet there's still so much more that is just a mystery.
Yeah. But now, with the ultrasounds, they've got that 4D where you can actually see the baby's picture. So I don't know, like, how early can you get a 4D ultrasound with the picture?
I want to say that you can start doing it as early as 13 weeks.
Okay. So then they would be able to pick up right away
Well, so now even just with a regular ultrasound, there's something called the nuchal scan where they measure a section of the spinal cord right at the neck. And usually that's a pretty good indication, but even then it could be the baby might not be sitting in the right position. It could be a different way to see the test. There's so many things that can happen. Even something as simple as when I was pregnant with my second child, my doctor kept saying to me towards the end, this is going to be a big baby. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we'll find out if I can push it out or not. And as I was getting closer and closer to my due date, he said, we're going to have to induce you soon. And he let me go a full week over my due date. And he didn't induce me, but he did a cervical sweep. And that within an hour, I was in full blown labor. And I gave birth about 6 hours after that. And my second child was only I think it was 2 ounces bigger than my first child, which meant that at a full week overdue, his measurements for trying to weigh the child within me was still so far off by over a pound of what he thought that even that measurement was off.
So what were the size of your babies?
My first was 7 pounds, 12 and a half ounces. My second was 7 pounds, 14 ounces. So they were 1.5 ounces off from each other. My third was just over 8 pounds. He was measured, we gave birth at a different hospital, so he was measured in kilograms. And I honestly don't remember the exact kilogram weight, but I remember it was just over 8 pounds. And then the surrogate baby that I had was 10 pounds. I did that one without any pain medication, without any other help except for Pitocin. So that was like my warrior mama strength one.
See, and my babies were all little. 2 were 5'11" and 2 were 6'11".
Wow.
They were just little. And then I can remember with my youngest daughter, it was so funny because when we decided that we were going to get pregnant, we had already had the 2. And then it was like at supper time, okay, should mommy and daddy have another baby? And of course, the 2 girls at the time, yeah. We decided then what we were going to name the baby.
Aww.
And so I wanted the name, I loved the name Maya. And the consensus was Mia. They like the name over Maya. And I'm like, no, I like Maya. Then I went in and she was going to have my middle name, which was Kim. So then we went in for the ultrasound, and that was when we'd never seen a 4D before, but we got a 4D picture of her.
Right.
And she looked identical to me.
Wow.
I'm like, her name is Maya because she's Maya baby. She's Maya baby.
That's really
and it was
cute.
so funny because now she's 15 years old. And I'll look at her and I'll be like, you're Maya baby. And I'm like, no, you're Maya baby, Maya Kim,
That's really cute.
I'll never, ever forget that ultrasound. Because it was like, oh my gosh, does she ever look like you, Shannan? Yeah. I'm like, oh.
So because of your whole story and your whole background, was there something that you had already sort of garnered from your recovery that you could put towards recovering after you did lose the baby? Or was it a totally different process of feeling like I'm okay on the other side?
Well, I can honestly say, with me going through that grieving process and the relationship with my husband at that time, I stuffed a lot down because of that, right? I couldn't express my full emotions or whatever. Also because of, not feeling safe to express my emotions.
Okay. Had you already started healing from your childhood traumas?
No.
Oh, so it was really one big jumble.
It was just another thing that was being suppressed.
Okay.
But at those particular times, you don't realize the effects that all of these things take effect. Right. Until later on in life.
Right.
And then it wasn't until later on in life where I realized, oh my gosh, like there is still so much that I needed to deal with regarding, of course, my childhood traumas, but also the loss of the baby.
Right. So was it after the next 3 kids were born?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then once I went through my journey of really become awakening, and dealing with my addiction and realizing that me suppressing my feelings towards the baby all played a part of all of it.
Right.
Then I went through the mourning process again, because I wrote a book. You know that I wrote a book. And that was when all that stuff started to really resurface again, especially regarding the baby, because I have a chapter in that regarding the whole process.
Right.
And it's just like, oh my gosh. And that was where I really started to heal, because I could release it. I released it on paper. I could actually cry again. I was totally at a different state of mind.
Right.
You know, I was more mature. I could see things more for what they were.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like now you're a better mom and a better wife because of it?
Yes. Yeah. Because I'm my true authentic self.
Right.
You know, because I didn't know who I was back then.
Right.
You know,
right. You were trying to be something for everybody else and not for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was. I was a people pleaser back then. I was a chameleon.
Right.
You know, I stuffed down my sadness and everything else, and really, not for me. It was so, when you're put in that state, you just want everything to get back to normal. That's all
right.
people want. Get back to normal, get on with your life.
Right. Right. And God forbid your own feelings should make other people feel uncomfortable.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Right. Now I can honestly say, if something like that did happen to me again, with the state of my mind and my knowing and where I am now, I would take that time to have that grieving process, and whatever it took until I felt that I needed, I
right.
would take it for sure.
Right.
I wouldn't be listening to what any other person or individual said. I would go with what my feelings are telling me inside, that what I need. Because I know now, I know who I am.
Right.
Right. I know that everything comes within, and I know, like, I have faith and I believe in, the higher power and everything else. And I know that they'll guide me to where I need to be.
Right. It's so interesting that you say that, even though in the moment of delivering that baby, that you could feel the love and this spiritual being of whatever was there, but then not being able to really keep that feeling within you, that it took a long time to still process everything following not only the loss of the child, but the birth of the next 3 children.
Exactly. And yeah, because I'll tell you, being in that room, and that's what I said to my husband at the time, can you not feel it? Can you feel it? And he's like, no.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm like, oh my gosh, can you not feel it? Like, right. I'm actually, I was trying to describe it to him as I was, and it was obviously only meant for me to feel.
Yeah. If you could give advice to anybody else, I know you've given a lot of fantastic pieces of advice, but if you could say one thing to somebody who is experiencing a child loss, pregnancy loss, infant loss, whether it's something that they had to decide or something that just happened, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing that I would have to tell individuals is, if you need to talk about it, you need to express your feelings and emotions, and whether it's to, a family member or a friend, or even if you have to go to a counselor or whatever, you have to get that out. Yeah. And the more you talk about it, it's not going to take the pain away, because that pain will always be there. Right. But it'll help you to release whatever you need to release grief-wise, because you don't want to suppress those feelings at all, because they will damage you later on in life. Yeah. I can tell you that firsthand. It will. And that's the last thing that you want to do. And, there are many people out there that want to be a part of this journey along with you. And don't exclude them from that. There's going to be people that want to help you, and those people will come forward for sure. Yeah. And it might be the person you least expect, but they'll still be there. Absolutely. And I think, there's what will also, which did, happen with me too, is, it was more after I wrote my book and everything, and I became more open, was when more women had came to me. And when I wrote my book and they read that chapter about the baby, and these were friends that I've known for a long time, and they said that was the hardest chapter for them to read in my book, because they had never, they experienced it, but they never told anybody. Right. And that brought them back to that time So now they are able to talk about it as well.
That's amazing that you're able to help people even by telling your own story, to be able to then allow other people the space to tell theirs.
Because you don't really realize what the ripple effect is,
Right.
that you have on people. And that's one thing I'm kind of starting to realize now a little bit, between my podcast and my book and me being a transformational mentor and going on stage talking and that. Like I go out and I do those things and I know that I'm helping people, but I don't know the impact that I am helping. And now people are coming back and they're like, they're letting me know. And will I ever really know the impact? I don't know. But all I know is I'm doing something good by sharing my words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep on doing it. And I'm going to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it.
Yeah. Which is all you can do.
Yeah. And every time I tell my story, I'm healing as well. And I'm helping other people heal. And yeah, because that's my purpose.
Yep.
That's what our purpose is. Our purpose here on earth is to create, to help others, to teach and learn, to grow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So where can people find you?
Well, they can go onto my social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Shannan Mondor. And my name is got 2 A's, not O's, SHANNAN. You can go onto my website as well, which has everything on there. And it is shannanmondor.com. You can see my podcast information, my book, all my courses that I offer.
Perfect.
You can even come onto one of my master classes. I do free master classes, which you look on social media and they're plastered all over there. And yeah, listen to my podcast, Fulfillment in Faith. And that's where you are just telling your beautiful story. And so many other people from all over the world are sharing their stories. And yeah, so that's how you can get a hold of me. And I would love if, your audience would follow me. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. And I think that they should, because I even for the first time we spoke, because we didn't speak for the podcast first, we had that interview first, and just that, I think we spoke for an hour and a half, even though
I know,
so much less time. And the whole time I'm like, I love this woman. She's incredible.
Well, I think it is with me, and I'm not bragging or anything like that by no means, but so many people say that to me, but that's because you know what? I'm me.
Right.
I spent 50 years, like I'm 54, and I spent 50 years being an individual that I wasn't. I was a people pleaser. I conformed to what everybody wanted me to be. And what did it get me? It got me an addiction. It got me suicidal tendencies, mental illness. And I have done so much work on who I am. And I'm just so authentic. Like what you see is what you get. And I think it really comes out of me. And that's what really resonates with people. They're attracted to that.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say, like, we all call it people pleaser, but are you really pleasing anybody? Whereas just by being you, you're pleasing so many more people.
That is exactly what I have found. Anybody that I was trying to please before, they are not in my life at all anymore.
Yeah.
And now the people that are coming to me, they're like, teach me, teach me. I want what you've got.
Right.
I like your vulnerability. And that's the biggest thing too, is I can, like I show my emotions wherever, whatever. And I know that that's one of my biggest strengths is just being vulnerable. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not afraid to either. Like I said, I am who I am.
Yep. Well, I really, really appreciate the fact that you opened up and shared on my podcast. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you and being able to chat with you, even if it's not for your podcast or my podcast.
Yeah, we'll just keep visiting, having coffee Zooms,
I love it.
I gotta say, I do have to say that a lot of my really close friends now that I've attracted into my life, they don't even live in my city. They don't even live in my country, let alone my province. Right.
Well, then I feel honored. I don't live in either of those.
No, and that's so true. You know what I mean? Like I've got a really good friend in England and in Dubai, and then like in the provinces of Ontario. And we literally have coffee Zooms now because we're on the same level. We get each other.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that is worth, oh gosh, it's just so special to me. So
It's like
special.
the only good thing that came out of COVID is the fact that we realized that Zoom is such a powerful tool.
Oh, I know. I know. And then of course I'm being interviewed too all over the world, which is
Right.
amazing.
Right.
Right. You know, like my podcasts are like in Australia and Pakistan, like everywhere's now,
That's
you know,
awesome.
because I'm being a guest and it's amazing. So I'm meeting all these different friendships through that too,
Yeah.
right? Just like you know,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
It
It's
really
wonderful.
is. It
The
really is.
world
Well,
really is small.
it's a small world after all. It's my
It
favorite
is.
ride.
Yes. Once you go on it, that's all you hear the whole time you're at Disney World and Disneyland.
Yep.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I have to thank you because, you know, you just made my journey even more exciting and more loving and expanded it even more. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you for joining me today on Pushing Through Loss. I hope this episode has provided support, understanding, and a sense of community for those who've experienced pregnancy loss. Remember, you are not alone in your journey, and there is strength within you to face the challenges that come your way. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with others who may benefit. Together, we can help each other heal and activate our inner strength warriors. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations, and until next time, you got this.